Actors, musicians and sports personalities often attract legions of fans. However, in my case, my heroes are artisans, craftspeople and watchmakers. These are the people responsible for creating fabulous timepieces, objects of beauty that promise a lifetime of ownership delight. Indeed, such watches inevitably outlive the talented individuals responsible for their creation. This is a world where excellence is evident with everything you see, hear and touch. This is the world of horlogerie, a rarefied world free of compromise and practiced by only the most gifted individuals. My ultimate hero, a man whose brilliance has never been matched, is Abraham-Louis Breguet, a genius, who, despite passing away over 200 years ago, is still held in the highest esteem by watch aficionados today. So what makes Breguet so remarkable? Allow me to enlighten you. Abraham-Louis Breguet was born in Neuchâtel in 1747. However, as he later wrote, his desire to learn would prompt him to leave Switzerland and move to Paris. He was just 15 years of age. In 1775, Breguet, just 28 years of age, established his own business on Quai de Loge. During his time in Paris, he came to prominence and ultimately attracted the patronage of aristocrats, royalty and other celebrated clients. Indeed, his famous patrons included Queen Marie-Antoinette, Napoleon Bonaparte and his wife Josephine, and Alexander I, Tsar of Russia. Breguet was a multi-talented individual. He was an inventor, an aesthete, a highly accomplished watchmaker, a marketing genius and a consummate businessman. Many of his inventions and ideas still remain in use today. Around 1665, Sir Isaac Newton formulated his theories on gravity after observing an apple fall to the ground. Approximately 130 years later, Breguet recognised that gravity would adversely influence the behaviour of this escapement and regulating organ in a pocket watch. He had the inspired idea of placing these parts in a revolving cage that rotated 360 degrees every 1, 4 or 6 minutes, negating the influence of gravity on the rate of the movement. Termed a tourbillon, he patented this invention in 1801 and it still remains a highly coveted mechanism, typically the preserve of horlogerie. In 1795, Breguet noted that a balance spring, affixed to the balance staff at one end and the stud at the other, did not develop concentrically. It is this concentricity that delivers isochronism, a prerequisite for precise timekeeping. His solution was to upraise the balance spring's outer coil and reduce its curvature. The result was a spring that breathed more concentrically, aiding precision. Remember, Breguet did not have computers to execute simulations. His ideas were the product of his creative mind and simply sketched to a piece of paper. Another benefit of this particular invention was the balance staff was less prone to wear. Breguet also equipped the balance with a bimetallic compensation bar, negating the effects of changing temperature. There are many more inventions I could talk about, such as the pare-chute, a type of shock absorption system fitted to the balance wheel, mitigating the impact of shocks. Today, many watches feature Inca-block or KIF systems, but Breguet was the pioneer in this area, masterminding his pare-chute back in the late 1700s. While chiming watches have existed since the 17th century, they historically employed a hammer and bell arrangement. That was until 1783 when Breguet produced a gong-spring formed of 2 hoops of hardened wire. When struck, the gong-spring delivered a far superior sound. Most minute repeaters today still subscribe to Breguet's approach. The Sympathique clock comprised of a pocket watch and clock. The clock featured a cradle that was designed to hold the watch. By placing the watch in the cradle, it would synchronise with the clock automatically. How did he even think of this? Yes, Breguet was a prolific inventor, and I could list many more of his inspired ideas, but there are still many more qualities to discuss about Breguet. I previously described Breguet as an aesthete. In the latter part of the 18th century, he designed a style of open-tipped hands, a style we now refer to as Breguet hands. Moreover, he conceived a style of Arabic numerals with a slightly angled posture that we now refer to as Breguet numerals. Both Breguet hands and numerals feature on many watches today, sold by a variety of brands. They looked fabulous in the 1700s, and they still look fabulous now. Sadly, we can't say that about many objects in life. Again, in the 18th century, Breguet began producing watches endowed with gilloché dials. These were created using a rose engine lathe, a technique that involved a guilloche imparting motifs to silver-gold dials. These motifs, uniting lines and curves, granted the dials with a silk-like appearance. Moreover, Breguet, always a practical man, used the technique to improve the dial's resistance to general wear and tear. Today, some brands use stamping or CNC machines to simulate the appearance of a guilloché dial. However, they're unable to match the character and richness of the real McCoy. I'm pleased to say that Breguet, the company of today, still employs this time-consuming artisanal approach, i.e. it still uses rose engine lathes. It may be superfluous to say, but Breguet was a watchmaker par excellence. The Breguet number 160, the so-called Marie-Antoinette watch, remains one of the most complicated grand complications ever produced. Containing 823 parts, the watch was completed 44 years after the initial order was received. In fact, it was completed 4 years after Breguet's death under the supervision of his son. This watch was made with no financial time constraints. It was luxury of the highest order. Breguet was a consummate businessman. Counterfeits are not a modern day problem. They were also a problem back in the 1700s. Recognising that his watches were being copied, Breguet conceived the secret signature, a type of hallmark discreetly applied to the dial. It's a tradition that continues to feature on modern day Breguet watches. Breguet's tact watch employed the sense of touch to inform its owner of the prevailing time. While the watch was suitable for blind patrons, it was also ideal for well-heeled clients who wanted to discreetly feel the time whilst in polite company. Mindful that his watches were the preserve of the few, Breguet conceived the subscription watch. A simpler, more accessible watch, the subscription watch was equipped with one hand, imparting the hours and minutes, and it featured an enamel dial. The watch was marketed using a form of brochure. Prospective purchasers were required to make a down payment at the time they placed their order, with the balance paid on delivery. Housed in either a gold or silver case, the watches were known for being very reliable. Breguet sold 700 subscription watches, thereby introducing his work to a far larger audience. While these watches were affordable, when contrasted with Breguet's more exclusive offerings, they remained expensive by today's standards. But then again, the dials of these watches still bore the name of the great man. What is clever about the subscription watch is that Breguet's clients were paying 25% at the time they placed the order, no doubt aiding Breguet's cash flow and meeting the scourge of time wasters. It remains a brilliant idea that many independent watch brands still use today. Today we talk about CRM, Customer Relation Management Systems. Businesses often use computer systems to manage the interactions with its customers or potential customers. We perhaps think of it as a modern day idea. However, Breguet was keeping detailed sales records back in the late 18th century. These records are now kept in the Breguet Museum in Paris. These annals contain the names of some of the most illustrious figures in history. Interestingly, Breguet continues to invite new clients to have their purchase registered in this way. Just pause for a moment and think of Abraham-Louis Breguet in the late 1700s, early 1800s. You don't have access to wire erosion machines, today's bar turning machines, Liga technology, or have access to contemporary materials such as grade 5 titanium or silicium. It begs the question, what would he have created today with these modern technologies available to him? Sadly, we'll never know. Today, the name Breguet lives on. The company is owned by the Swatch Group and it's located in the Vallée de Joux, a region synonymous with making expressions of horlogerie, especially watches equipped with complications. The owners of Breguet and its management are well aware of the responsibility they have to perpetuate the Breguet name. Indeed, the Maison respects the legacy of the great man, crafting exquisite watches blessed with beauty and mechanical virtue, imbued with craftsmanship and finished to the highest order. It embraces modernity, where this is appropriate, for example using silicium balance springs, but it also upholds traditions such as hand engraving, hand-guilloché, Grand Feu enameling. If you wish to learn more about today's Breguet watches, see our written reviews on Escapement magazine. I'll put a link in the comments section. In my professional capacity rounding about watches, I've met a few brand ambassadors, including actors, golfers, racing drivers, etc. Most of them have proved to be very pleasant and clearly possess talents that I sadly lack. But I've never been starstruck. Last year I met Emmanuel Breguet, Vice President and Head of Patrimony of the eponymous Maison. A direct descendant of the great man himself, I confess I was starstruck and found myself nervously stuttering in his presence. While this was a personal highlight of 2023, it is Abraham-Louis Breguet who remains my #1 idol, and, in my opinion, the greatest watchmaker to have ever walked on the earth. I've said much about the historical side of Breguet, but there's so much more I can say about the modern day brand. Indeed, because there is much left to say, I intend to return to the modern day Breguet in the coming weeks. Safe to say, Breguet is a company I hold in the highest esteem. Oh, and before you ask, would I love to own a Breguet? You betcha. Until next time, watch geeks, keep collecting.